Hi, everybody. I'm Grace Bubeck, and today I'm with Tree in another interview in the series Seekers Finders. Hi, Tree. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Tree's joining us from Australia, and she's a shamanic practitioner and healer, and she works with people's bodies and specifically nervous system to help them come home to their true self. So, Tree, I'd like to start off, and you have your teachers in the background.
Yeah.
You have an unusual journey in that the first part of it was with a teacher who wasn't in his body. So just talk to us about that and how it's possible to have a teacher who's not in his body.
Yeah, I've been with Mea Baba since I was 21, Grace. But I can also recall him back to, I would say, a nervous breakdown that I had at about 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember going out of my house, out to the starry night, and imploring to God, this isn't all there is it? This isn't it,
Mm-hmm.
So there was, from a kid, a strong feeling that there was so much more. And God answered me at that time, and I was crying and weeping and, obviously not content with life as it was. So there was this strong yearning. So I got this beautiful hug from, I now know, Mea Baba. But as a child, I just felt hugged and held, totally supported. And I got told, no, this isn't it, but wait, just wait. And I feel like I had to, form the ego structure and then have it pulled apart. This is the game. Yeah.
It is the game, yes.
Yeah. And when I was 21, I found myself in Mea Baba's tomb in India, and I introduced myself, and I received the same hug. I said, I love you, and I received that same hug. So I know that Baba has been with me, well, probably forever, but in this life, since I called out, imploring, whatever it was, whether I didn't know, a God, a universal source, whatever that was. So, and he has, I felt his presence has been with me, supporting me as a child, and helping to rip shreds off my ego as a person, as a woman, in later life, and constant companion, total beloved, so although not in human form, I have had a lot of experience with spirit being just as real as our gross bodies.
So have I, and so do a lot of people in their spiritual journey. And I really feel it's something that's worth mentioning, because so often that's something that we don't tend to mention,
Right.
Because it seems weird, or we don't know whether the person we talk to will understand. But I've come across and I've spoken to so many people for whom this has been a reality. And often it's across religious traditions, not all the time, but, like say, Mary may appeal to a Jewish person, or, I remember Sarah Taylor, whose background was, nothing really, connecting with Padmasambhava, who's like a very eminent figure in Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
Actually, he brought Buddhism to Tibet. So it's like there's all these, or it may be, like one of my teachers was actually an Indian Hindu yogic teacher, Shivananda. He came in for a while and then, I guess wasn't so important more after anymore. But I just feel it's really helpful for people to know that when we ask for help spiritually, help will be given, and sometimes it'll come in the form of a presence of a teacher, who's not in the body.
I've had beautiful visions of Ramana Maharshi, just visiting at a certain time. I've had Jesus come, and during one particular awakening, and this does sound very weird, but it's sort of tapping into that oneness of us all. I have sort of gotten out of my bed, as I do sound weird now, as Jesus. I walked across the room and I was Jesus. He was literally in this body, or this body was that. So sometimes you're separate and having conversation, or dialogue, or visions of, and sometimes there's a merging of spirit.
And to me, that's one of the sources of grace on the spiritual journey, that we can be open to receiving teaching, more specifically, my sense really is it's a transmission, it's a transmission of a state of consciousness, of, love, or whatever the aspect of the diamond is, but can be many things. Can be love, can be compassion, can be just light, peace.
In my healing work, a lot of beings come through. Not in the TRE work, is more mechanical work, but in the shamanic work, lots of beings come through and give guidance in healing. So that's such a loving, compassionate, but even just on a practical level, I have found in the past spirit in my life just being really, really helpful, and to be able to see those machinations working, whether we see them or not. That hierarchy is working with humanity. A good example of that was when my mum was dying. We stayed home and cared for her when she died, my sister, my dad and I, and I could feel a presence on the front door, at the front door of the house. And I thought, oh, perhaps it's my brother, I'm not sure. There's someone waiting for her. And a few days went on, and they sort of started to come down the corridor, and I just thought, oh, I'll tune in, I'll see who it is, and it was the spirit of death. And he was, first of all, for quite a few days on the front porch, very patient. Then he walked down the corridor, and he was getting closer. My mum was in the lounge room. He was getting closer, just patiently waiting for the moment of her leaving her body. And he had a role to do in this. So it's sort of that practical, I don't know, this practical machinations that work that we normally don't see. At that time, you know, I was highly tuned in, and I could see and work with this spirit of death. And he came into the lounge room then and was just holding space. And eventually I could see and feel him under my mother, holding her. And I would check in, because it was like, is she going to die tonight? And I'd check in with the spirit of death, and he'd say, no, go and sleep. I'm holding her. It's not time. And so it was just very practical and helpful. So we went to sleep, and then, you know, he was right there with his arms around her, and he said, yes, it's time. So I said to my sister and father, we stay up tonight, you know, we'll stay up. And so we all sat with my mother and sort of helped accompany her out, or witnessed her holding her hand, witnessed her leaving. It was very beautiful. I suppose I want to, while it's here, that just talk about this, her last breath, you know, speaking about death. And her last breath was a beautiful out breath, and it was a breath to eternity. There was, yes, the body stopped, but her essence just so just moved to the next moment, or to the next sphere. And she's very, very present in my life, you know. Pops in quite a lot. So that's just an example of how you know, you can cooperate practically with spirit.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, when we are open, or even when we're not open, often loved ones who die kind of elevate us with them. You know, they take us with them into an opening that's much larger than had been there before. You know, can be such a beautiful gift to be there.
It was a beautiful
being
gift.
Dies.
It's very much like a birth. I've been at a birth and of my friend's son, and that was absolutely stunning. And I came out of that birth, and I actually had an awakening experience after the birth, because it was so profound and deep, and we were very there and walked out, and just there was a little awakening experience after that, just the magic of that moment. But so one coming in, you know, totally beautiful, and you know, a soul going out also is almost very similar to a birth, actually. And obviously physically quite hard to leave the body, like not easy, a hard process sometimes to leave the body, but the actual spirit just burst on to to something else. So it was a privilege.
So let's get back to your journey. You know, like maybe aspects for you that were really the searching for something that you knew had to be there, but somehow you know, you knew you had to find it. Is that an experience of yours, or were you always aware of there being this
Yeah, I think there was
larger dimension?
from a small child, there was always an awareness of, I am that. And yeah, we were talking the other day, Grace. Will I give the example of that thunderstorm?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a child, my sister and I were riding horses, and often nature is for me, has been a really strong catalyst
For
for
many, yeah.
awakening. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it is perfect. It is true nature, personified. Same as the gurus for me. So nature and the gurus have been real mirrors for my own beingness to flourish. A thunderstorm, horse riding, drenched, lightning, thunder, just absolutely, the beauty of the planet, and just being in the moment so strongly. We got really saturated. We were little kids. We took all our clothes off, wrapped ourselves in blankets, and ran home with the lightning and the thunder striking. And yeah, I can remember the presence behind me, and at that point coming right through me, like just absolute awareness, being absolute awareness. And again, in those awakening moments, or when you're totally awake, everything is crystal clear and vibrating. The vision is so beautiful. So it was that, two little beings running down the street, and came home and ran inside to our house, and of course our mother was concerned and got angry out of fear, and then I felt slapped back into the sort of ego construction, like fear, and clamped down. So I can think of my life being lots of moments of, and everyone I feel is the beingness more often than they understand. Yeah, we're always often the beingness, and particularly nature is that catalyst for us. But then we can snap very easily back, usually through fear, and contract back into form and identity, from the formless, so I would say I always knew, but contracted up, and particularly through like the creating the ego identity, probably early, maybe early 20s, creating an ego identity, and still having moments of presence, but more linking with the ego identity and going more into suffering because of it. Yeah. And then meeting Baba, and Baba starting to rip shreds off the ego identity, and that sort of process happening. Yeah.
So does that mean you weren't really aware of searching so much?
I don't think I was aware of searching, and yet the beingness was having its moments. And yet later in life, when that ego identity didn't work and I was in psychological suffering, there was, I can't do it. I don't want this, So it was, there was probably not so much a searching with Baba, but more a recognition, this is, God. And I can say the word God. Some people don't like it. I didn't grow up religious, so for me the word God is fine, but you might use universal source or whatever suits. But for me it was recognition of the great beauty of the universal source of all, And so I really just devoted and loved. So I was, bhakti was my nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand the teachings at all. But since having awakenings, I understand the teachings as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what was the question, Grace? I've gone way over here.
Well, the question was about searching, and searching
Searching.
usually arises from suffering, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I think some people are, maybe they've landed here and more evolved, and maybe they don't create such a strong ego identity. Maybe their beingness is stronger and they just let that arise naturally. I formed up out of fear, and this is where I talk about the nervous system work. I feel like the fear causes contraction in the body. Identifying as merely the body, but we also have a nervous system that works to protect us. So we contract in the body, we contract into our ego identity, and that causes suffering. That causes the great suffering. And when a person falls away or ego identity falls away, then the psychological suffering isn't there. But yes, Grace, it was suffering as a person that drove me to surrender, actually. Just to surrender to myself. So,
And it just occurs to me that also there's something different that you mentioned, which is the path of devotion, which maybe is less of a seeking, but more of a recognition and a devotion to what is somehow known, but not maybe fully known.
yes,
But there's just a sense of being drawn to that, or wanting to serve that, because it is somehow known to be so.
That's beautiful, Grace. It
so
is
divine and so beautiful, and so everything that we know is true, but somehow can't quite yet fully embody and own as true. So there's something being drawn, and it's not so much as searching, it's more being drawn. I just realize.
I think so, very much so. I think when I look at my gurus or I look at nature, it just reflects my own perfection. And by that I don't mean my person's perfection, I mean my reality's perfection. And loving them and loving nature really draws that and feeds that, and it doesn't feed the person or the ego identity, it feeds that. So it's sort of an organic natural process, that feeding and drawing out, as you said, and at the same time Mea Baba very much worked on the ego identity, breaking it down. And I feel at the moment, in the big stage of the virus, we're all getting a big work, a very, very big work on our mortality. Who are we? Just an enormous work anyway. So true, Grace. It's drawn out through the devotion. It's quite a beautiful path. And it's not everyone's path, but it was my path.
Certainly mine too. And, you know, I'm wondering, I mean, for sure there's a lot of truth in the yogic teaching, you know, that there's teachings that there's a path of devotion and a path of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I don't feel they're totally exclusive, but often one of them is deeper than the other.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and maybe the path of knowledge is more one where, you know, the searching maybe is more explicit because there's a wanting to know.
Yeah. 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 And I think, yeah, I don't know, my own past was maybe the wanting to be. Um, but it's also good to understand the knowledge to give context to the awakenings. And I did struggle with that in the beginning. Yeah, I did.
How so?
I had a trauma in my marriage, and I would have been probably 46, and it was such a hit for my ego, and I'm so grateful for it because it did lead me to non-suffering and this understanding. But it sort of threw my person off. I really had such a shock that you know, it was like trauma causing an awakening. So I woke up the next morning after this trauma, and I was just pure awareness. I looked around my room, and I had clothes there, and I was like, whose clothes are they? Nothing made sense. You know, I was just pure awareness. There was no person to be found. But I didn't have any context or understanding for that. And at the time I had teenage kids, and so I sort of put the clothes on and put my person back on, and sort of fought my way back into my life, you know, because I didn't realize what a rare and wondrous thing that would be to behold and nurture at the time. Even though I have read Meher Baba, and he's, you know, he's the non-dual avatar, really. But I didn't understand the teachings at all. So, yeah, I was not of the path of knowledge. But that was the beginning of the end for me because, yeah, I got back into my life and I went back to work, but I got really sick and had a breakdown, and again everything just started to slowly break down for me. So yeah, that's, you know, we often talk about, you know, these gradual awakenings. You know, it is happening your whole life, and then you might have these more paramount instant experiences that and then eventually, you know, after maybe a few, it becomes a sustained state. Yeah. But there were lots along the way. Yeah. Again, I've gone off the train and I don't even remember the question, Grace.
No, actually, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, Tree. You know, you speak very clearly about the path and what happens. So that's
Okay.
yeah, it's very much on the topic.
Okay, good. Good.
And I'm wondering whether you would see that similarly. You know, it seems to me that this undoing, you know, of our personality and the conditioning and everything, it keeps happening throughout. You know, like they're just because somebody has had an awakening, even a very deep one, you know, it doesn't necessarily undo everything. You know, it may it may undo some old habits and conditioning, but other conditioning or habits or contraction may still be in place. And there keeps being this, there keeps being this undoing throughout. And to me, that's really the, in some ways, I don't want to say the more interesting aspects. They're certainly the more accessible ones, because we can embrace that undoing. And
I think that's where the practical work is. That's where we can partake.
I think that's what I was getting to. Yes.
And I think this is why I'm so big on healing and healing trauma and spiritual awakening, because I feel like if we heal the trauma before, we are loosening the contraction, we're settling the nervous system, which can really hold our beingness, our true nature hostage, I feel. We're leaving the stories that can just trap us, in this crystallized structure of ego. So that's before. During, just as a support, particularly for the nervous system. I use TRE for my own body and nervous system.
Just spell that out for people, because everybody may be aware of it.
Yeah, I'm a visual person. I'm going to spell it out. It's TRE, trauma, tension, and stress release work. I did a lot of that on my own body and nervous system, and it's been profoundly life-changing. I feel like it has been instrument in my awakening, and also going through the experience, because it can be quite intense with Kundalini awakenings and all sorts of other wonderful and mysterious, mystical things that happen during awakenings. And also post-awakening, to just keep doing the work, because we transcend and then we come back to the body, and so whatever is in the body is still waiting to be dealt with. And I think it's a really important part of the process to deal with the contraction, the trauma, and to work on balancing the nervous system. Because after profound awakenings, we can still find ourselves contracting back into personhood from a trigger, and so that needs to leave the system. And you can do the work to help that leave the system. One example for me, contracting and forgetting my true nature, was my daughter was having a cesarean, an emergency cesarean, and I was all of a sudden very contracted and almost begging the universe to make her safe. That's an example of just really contracting back, your attachments, my beautiful daughter. And on a relative level, of course, I'd love to keep her, because she's my beauty, but at the same time, even just releasing that to the wisdom of the universe, and acknowledging her journey to be whatever it would be. Now, I'm happy to say that, she survived and did beautifully, and I still have her. But even on that level of, if I didn't have her, just being able to release that, and we're back again to death here, Grace, just to trust the journey of the souls, that they might live for this long, or they might live a very long life, and this is our great beauty and time on planet Earth. And yeah, again, I've gone off on you on a
Ah,
tangent there, but
well,
yeah.
actually, not really,
No, okay.
because it's also okay, this
Mm,
context is a very, and for those who are watching this video after the COVID-19 pandemic, just to say that this is the context of it. And so we're talking at a time when this is really part of all of our lives. Tree, are you still here? Hello, Tree. I think we've lost Tree. Hello, Tree. So, yes, so we lost Tree for a bit there, and now she's back. And, after acknowledging that we are in this situation of COVID-19 and being reminded of our mortality, I'd like to ask Tree about a period of her spiritual journey that is another kind of natural period for women, which is that of menopause. And for you, I understand that coincided with also you taking time to be by yourself for 3 years. So just talk to us about that, Tree.
Yeah, I saw menopause as a portal, really.
Mhm,
So I suppose if you're talking about searching, I suppose there was like a little search during this period of my life.
mhm,
Uh, yeah, I saw it as a great portal to dive in and down. It was a really good time for me to particularly check out the wounding held in my system. I felt
mhm,
it didn't start like that. It started just as restorative. My children were off at uni, so they'd grown up and left home to go to uni. Um, in India they have the householder can now go within.
mhm. Yes.
It was my version of that. I,
Mhm,
I I sort of felt that strongly. It was the time to heal trauma, mm, devote my life to truth,
mhm,
discovering truth. It was all starting to really amp up at this stage.
mhm,
So I really followed my intuition. There was lots of synchronistic events, and the universe just supported uh, what I call my menopausal um, initiation. Really, yeah.
mhm,
I took it on as sort of not as a medical condition, but more as a spiritual involvement.
mhm.
Yeah, in my life. So
I
I went.
imagine that's very much also part of the shamanic tradition
Uh,
to see it that
well,
way, or not really?
yeah, yeah, because we go through these incredible stages in our life,
Mhm,
women in particular, maiden, mother, and crone. And although not all of us mother children, we might be mothering careers, or we might be mothering the people in
mhm,
our life. We all go
mhm,
through these stages. And this stage is really the last stage in this body. So what better time and you have the time perhaps you know, your career might be able to come back a little. The children have left home. Yeah, it's a perfect time to look within. So although I had to work in the second 2 years of it, I took time to live by myself. I live on 17 acres in the hinterlands of the south coast, so it's beautiful bushland. And I lived in a tin shed that was on the property, so it had no internet, no radio, no television. It was very silent. And I took the time to be in nature and started to nurture myself. But then it became a whole shamanic initiation. Because I was so still and quiet, spirit world really started to come into my awareness. And I had 2 Native American spirit guides come and work with me. A whole lot of spirits come from the subtle realm and do shamanic healings on me. So it was quite an incredible time, a difficult time. It was a lot of physical openings, a lot of openings that occurred, you know, crown chakra, etc. You know how we have these openings. So on a metaphysical level they were happening, but physically they were also quite painful. Yeah, I went through my traumas and had subtle surgery done on me by spirit guides. And so that was a shamanic, I call it the birth of a shaman, because at the end of it, one of my spirit guides asked me to continue the work in this life, which I do now. And it was a little bit like, you know, why me? But I was out there in all sorts of weather, sitting in my little circle, drumming, and I got given a guide to do this toning, this beautiful sound work at the time. And of course there's a lot of work about the vagus nerve at the moment, and of course all this sounding and outward breath is just incredible for toning the vagus nerve. So again, just helping my system allow the beingness to surface and quieten the fears and noise of the person. So I did record that 3 years in a little book that I wrote called Hot Flush Dark Cave. And as we were saying before, memory sort of goes. So I don't remember much of it. I can sort of try and remember it. But I know that a lot of healing was done. And I wasn't aware at the time of trauma, or now I've studied TRE, trauma, tension, release work, and work in that. But I wasn't aware of any of that then. It really was just an organic process happening to me from the grace of the universe. And spirit worked in that. Even to the point where now I understand about inner child journeys, but I didn't even have a concept of that. And yet I was guided to go down and meet my own little girl, who was down in the depths and was frightened, very frightened. And so I scooped her up, and her spirit was with me for 3 days. And as a grown woman, I nurtured her and brought her into the wholeness of my being. So, and now I realize, well, yes, that's something that, you know, is done in different modalities, and it is such a healing thing. But a lot of things that happen on my journey have just happened spontaneously, guided by the universe.
and you didn't necessarily actually have outer beings, like human beings, as therapists or healers. As I understand
No.
it, all of this happened as guided by spirit.
Yeah. Yes, Grace. Yeah.
Mm.
And my nervous system was so dysregulated that I would not have found people safe. Yeah. I only felt safe with the plants and the animals at that time. Yeah, people were not safe to my nervous system, so I would not have sought out this sort of work. But the spirits were of a level that felt totally safe to me. Yeah, yeah. And I'd had a lot of experience with spirits earlier doing biodynamic gardening, so cooperating with nature to produce food and gardens. And yeah, so I'd already built up a trust with the spirit world. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Can I just come in there, because I find that really fascinating, you know, this because in my own life, you know, what happened was exactly that at first there were teachers who weren't in a body, because I don't think I could have coped with a teacher in the body. You know, it felt too unsafe, too dangerous, too not possible. But for me, there came a point where I knew I needed a teacher in the body. It was like a very clear felt need for that. And I put that out as a prayer, and then the teacher appeared, you know, after a while. And my sense is that that happens often for people. Sometimes there actually is a need for a human teacher or healer or therapist. You know, and spirit is not, it's like not everything can be done just in relation to the realm of spirit. And sometimes the very human aspects of relating, healing, being taught, teaching are needed, you know, to kind of complete whatever needs completion, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree, Grace. This 3 years was very much spirit, and that's basically all I could probably work with at the time. But after this 3 years, it was like a beginning of an awakening to oneness. But after that 3 years working in nature and with the spirits, I did discover TRE, the trauma tension release work, and that's very much with the body. And my own work now is called Awakening Through the Body. So I see the body as a very big part of this. So I released a lot of trauma stored in the tissue of the body and balanced my nervous system now to the point, except for because we've gone through the fires. So we've had 3 months of fires up to the front door of the house here. And I noticed that was the first time I felt my system being in fight and flight for the first time in years. So TRE has been able to really regulate my nervous system down to a balanced state. So that work with the body, that work with people, that when your nervous system can stand working with people, it might be horses first, it might be nature, and eventually when you can come and work with the people and work with your body, so body work, massage, TRE, craniosacral, all these things are so helpful on the path to awakening. Yeah, I cannot recommend working with the body enough. Even though the body is in this, it's still very much a part of the wholeness. Yeah.
And you know, I'm also wondering, whether the body doesn't just hold contractions that are from this life, but also from previous lives, or even contractions that are in the human psyche.
Yeah.
You know, that somehow find their kind of reflection in the body, and then can also be released through the body.
Mm.
And you know,
even
sometimes there's also, it's less the body and it's more at an emotional level that the healing needs to happen, you know, and just releasing physical contractions in the nervous system will not touch on the emotional need for healing.
Okay. I feel that the emotion is held in the tissue, Grace. So, but also working with someone and having them hold space for you, that grounded space for you to meet, greet, release. That's very much a part of the shamanic work. And a lot of people on the shamanic table do release with a shake, a release from the tissue, and an emotion may come, a little tear may come, or a feeling. So I feel it's all combined, and the emotion is held in the body. So by releasing the body and maybe working with someone as well, like it's a holistic thing. It's the body, it's the nervous system, it's the emotion, but it is all held within the body. It does bear the burden. Yeah. I don't know if that explains that, what I mean to you with that, but yeah.
Yes, you know, I if the main emotional coloring is fear, then my sense is the body can release a lot of that.
Yeah.
If the main emotional coloring is one of a need for love, a need for connection, that's, I don't know, that can be purely physical. You know, there's a relational component that makes it less easy to just work on physically. But you know, my sense is people will know because they feel drawn to one rather than the other.
That's right. And often it's this
a combination
for a time, and then it's going to see that person for a time, and then it's this for a time. And you might keep up 3 of those practices or 2 that really work for you. I agree, Grace. It's a combination. It's a combination, and whatever is working for you. But I feel if we shake off our states of fight, flight, freeze, disassociation, flop, then we're more likely to be able to connect to our own true nature, our own beingness, and to realize that we are love as opposed to needing love from outside.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that generally ends in tears. Not always, but it's a very big ask. So, and it's not like loving the person, it's realizing that we are love, and that bubbles and emanates from us. And then we don't have that desperate need, we just enjoy what is around us. Yeah. So, and that is the true healing, and that is the true wholeness. But yeah, there can be a lot of work and releasing to come to that, or not, you know, or not. I don't know. Everyone's journey is so different, but
Yes. And you know, my sense is that when we really listen, we're very guided in what is needed at any one time.
I agree.
And I mean, often the body guides in giving us pain here or pain there. You know, us needing to look for relief.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that can be the portal for much more healing than just the
Yeah.
pain relief.
Yeah. I see some people going gently doing their work, and they don't have to hit these brick walls. I had to hit a lot of brick walls. Yeah, I was a bit thick. So yeah, and my body got chronic fatigue, um, and I had chronic pain for 2 years in my face, and so then that drove me to more healing. So pain is a good driver. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that during the time when you were in those 3 years that you spent by yourself?
Yeah, the third year, Grace, I spent a lot of it in bed with chronic fatigue. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think it was a combination of a lot of faculty openings, heart openings, crown chakras. You know, the whole system had quite dramatic openings, and that can take its toll.
Yeah.
But I did ask Spirit, and I was guided. I don't know the exact wording. I did write a lot about what Spirit said in the little book that I published, because a lot of it was pretty fantastic knowledge. Yeah, but Spirit said, "Yeah, you're working from your limited ego identity." And I think a lot of people come to this. It just doesn't work anymore. And so I was asked to surrender that, and you know, and even that was a process, and that didn't totally leave until I was watching Muji on the net in 2015. You know, I had a big person fall away in acknowledging that I am that he was talking about, not the person. Yeah, I'm lost again. I'm gone. I don't know what I was saying.
You're talking about the chronic fatigue and
Okay, yeah. So
continued until that
yeah,
point
and
of
then
really
surrendering.
letting go of yourself as a person.
Yeah, because that sort of defended fight, flight, freeze combination of nervous system, human being out there trying to create everything in the world, you know, it's just suffering. It really is just suffering. So to surrender that and allow the source to flow through is just a beautiful way of being on the planet. There's not the psychological suffering. You know, there's peace, there's love, there's joy. Yeah, and it's our natural state. It's our natural state, and we just forget. You know, we just forget. Yeah.
So my senses will kind of almost come to the hour, you know, I kind of try to keep things manageable for people watching. So is there anything that you'd like to add to what's being said? That you'd like to share with people? That you feel is really, you know, you really want to communicate?
Yeah. I suppose I would say this, you know, nervous system work at the moment on the planet. David Baselli, with his TRE, talks about inner peace, one organism at a time. And I really feel that is such important work on the planet at any time, but particularly at the moment. If we all came to our true nature and our place of inner peace, then that reverberates out into our environment, and you know, the whole, we live on such a beautiful planet, and I really feel it's sadly, and I was one of them until I did the work, particularly the TRE work, just full of dysregulated nervous systems. Yeah. So I'd say do the healing, particularly if you want spiritual awakening to occur in this life. And yeah, just sort of breathe, know that we are that, but it is that embodied existence of that. It's not the intellectual knowledge of that, because that energetically just comes from here. And we need the planet to, or we don't really need anything, but it would be delightful if the planet was full of embodied beings. And that's the game, and that's what we're all playing. So there is no worry, there is no concern really, and there's probably no rush either. It's all just happening. Yeah, it's all happening, and I don't really have much more to say, Grace. But one thing I would like to say is, I only work with the subtle realm in my healing work at the moment, but if the subtle realm does come in and you're going through an awakening experience, there's people that you can reach out and talk to about that. Craig Holliday, Bonnie Grenwell. I didn't feel a need to talk out because I sort of I trusted the process because I'd worked with spirit with gardening. But in the wrong family, it could be, instead of a spiritual emergence, it could be seen as mental ill health. There is more to the planet than the gross world. There are other spheres. There's a subtle world and the mental world, and it's a very mysterious planet. So I would just like to put that in there, that it's a possibility in awakening. It's not necessary. Just follow your awakening naturally and organically, because the universe knows how to run it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I feel that's the best encouragement and reassurance that you can give to people, that there's this unfolding that just happens naturally, and we don't really have to worry about this.
No.
Ultimately,
I think worry could get in the way. I think there's things that
seeking could get in the way too. I mean, that's the irony.
I think it's funny, isn't it? I think the seeking can be a beautiful part and an important part, and some people say it isn't. I think it can be, as long as you don't identify as the spiritual seeker with your ego, because that can get you very stuck. But the seeking, the pure seeking, is beautiful, but just don't get stuck as a seeker. Dive right in.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tree.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you for sharing your journey and your insight so deeply, and so I feel you're you're speaking very simply, but very directly, and I'm sure people will benefit from that enormously.
Thank you, Grace. It's been beautiful to talk. And since you said that, it is simple. It is very simple. It's our true nature. That's the trick. It's such a trick.
Yes.
But eventually, it's like that. Thanks, Grace, so much for having me.
You're welcome.
It's been lovely.
And just mention to people how they can find you in case they would like to.
Okay, I do have a website for my work, and it's called Awakening Through the Body, but it's .com.au. So it's the AU for Australia, because there's another lovely site that is Awakening Through the Body, but it's not me. Okay. So if you put AU on the end, you'll find me.
Great. So thank you again, Tree.
Yeah,
and,
thank you, Grace.
Yeah, nice. With an interruption.
A little break.
A little natural break. It's beautiful to speak to you.
Yeah, thank you, Grace, so much.
Yeah, thank you too.